You ready? Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, and thank you for being here today for the Dissolution public meeting of the potential dissolution of the town of Rye and the study that is being performed by CGR. I'm Joan Feinstein, the mayor of Rybrook, and one of four members, one of the four elected officials of the steering committee that has been spearheading this effort. I'd like to introduce today, to my immediate right is Joe Carvin, who is the town supervisor of the town of Rye. To his right is Norm Rosenblum, who is the mayor of Mamaroneck. And to my immediate left is Dennis Pilla, the mayor of Portchester. And I thank Mayor Pilla for availing us of the opportunity to meet here today at your lovely, lovely senior center. There are some people in the audience that I'd like to introduce, some elected officials. I have to put my glasses on right now. So I see that Sandy Galoff, who is Assemblywoman Sandy Galoff, is in the audience. Thank you very much. I think from Portchester we have Luis Marino, who is on the Board of Trustees. From Rybrook, Toby Marrow, who is also a member of the Board of Trustees. We have from the City of Rye, Susanna Keith, who is a member of the Rye City Council. Speaking about Rye City, we have former Mayor Steve Otis in the audience. He's also the Chief of Staff to Susie Oppenheimer. Who else am I forgetting?
From the Village of Mamaroneck?
Village.
Trustee
Tony Ryan, go ahead, Norm. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, please, I didn't see him.
We're going to go through the steering committee.
Okay, just want to make sure. Are there any other elected officials, former elected officials, that I haven't recognized today?
Trustee Ryan, Village of Mamaroneck.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. As I said before, we are the four elected officials of the steering committee. There are also other individuals who are non-elected officials, but very important to our villages and town, that also serve on the steering committee. So I would like to introduce from the village of Rybrook, Chris Bradbury, who's our village administrator, who's on the steering committee as well. Chris, please stand up. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over now to Supervisor Carvin to introduce your members of the steering committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Feinstein. I'd like to introduce our steering committee members, Bishop Nowotnick and Greg Arcaro. Is Greg here? Just a couple of quick words. I wanted to, first of all, thank all the municipal officials here. I think it's been an exemplary coordination and working together. In fact, I've been surprised even when we put out our bid, we had 5 different firms propose to provide services. We were virtually unanimous, not just in the selection of the firm that we ended up with, but we were actually unanimous almost in terms of the ranking of the firms as they presented. So I think it's been an exemplary consideration of consolidation, working very together. Mayor Pilla put a lot of hard work and effort into drafting the proposed grant proposal, which we received. And I think from the beginning we worked very closely together, and I'm looking forward to that cooperation going forward. So I want to thank my fellow elected officials for this groundbreaking event and the close collaboration. The second, which as we all know is all too lacking in today's society. I also wanted just to briefly mention that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. we're having a 9/11 service at Ryetown Park to commemorate and remember those terrible events and the families who lost loved ones. And I have to say, you know, that horrifically sad event, I really think puts things in perspective. Because in my view, you know, I've had the good fortune to travel the world over. I speak 4 different languages, and I think America is being challenged as never before. That's the most horrific attack on our nation in the history of our nation. And I think that if we're going to meet the challenges going forward, we're really going to need to come together and make strong local communities. You know, as somebody who lost a close one on September 11th, we ask ourselves every day, how do I respond? What's my response? And quite frankly, I was listening to the news this morning. They said, why not go out and help your neighbor, you know, if she needs to get some groceries, bring her some groceries. Random acts of kindness, commitment to our communities. Those are the kinds of things we can do to respond to September 11th and make our community stronger every day. Because if we have strong American communities, we'll have a strong America. And that's the response we need. So I can't thank the fellow elected officials enough. Thank you all for coming today.
Dennis, would you like to introduce your
Sure.
members?
My steering committee member. Basically, it's the mayors and the village administrators, managers. Chris Russo has a well-deserved day off today. I just want to take a quick moment, welcome everyone here to Portchester in our room, and I want to remind everybody that we're having a 9/11 memorial service tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Lyon Park, and I want to encourage everyone to come out to pay tribute, really, to the innocents and those who serve us, the first responders. And this is a wonderful opportunity. Just real quick, show of hands. Who's from Portchester? Who's from Mamaroneck? How about Rye Brook?
I'm from both places.
Rye City?
Because I paid one tax to Rye Brook and the other to Portchester.
Well, I'm between you and him. But, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity. We kind of have our labels of where we live, and we have an identity that's very special to us. But there's an interdependence, really, across all of our communities that's very important, and this is a wonderful opportunity. So I just want to thank everyone for coming here. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Joan.
Sure. We were talking about 9/11 ceremonies. I just wanted to let everyone know we had ours yesterday at our senior center, and it was really very well attended. So I know there are ceremonies tomorrow, but we had ours yesterday. I'd now like to introduce again Mayor Rosenblum from Mamaroneck. So you can
Thank you.
introduce your members.
The members in the Village Steering Committee include Dan Sarnoff, the Assistant Village Manager, who was here valiantly after suffering through the Hurricane Lee, which we got nailed yesterday or a couple of days ago. And also Rich Schlingland, who is not here, but valiantly gave the day off because we gave him the chance to introduce himself to his daughter, who he doesn't see too often. In any case, I would like to echo the board's sentiments, and particularly Joe's comments about 9/11. I'm personally involved in some members of the FDNY and other members, but also I would note that in particular, I would note one individual, Don Green, who was a personal friend and actually the president of Safe Flight Instrument Corp., who was on UA 93, and I think that group particularly represents symbolically and actual actions taken that Joe illustrated, and people getting together. When they found out what happened to the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, they actually took over that plane, and who knows what they saved, potentially either the White House or the Capitol. So with that, I just go with the adage that everyone keeps talking about, and I wholeheartedly agree, never forget. We should never forget the basic principles that make America the greatest place in the world to be. Like Joe, I travel a lot. Not as much as Joe, but there's nothing like coming back to the United States. The United States remains the one place where everybody wants to come to if they have a chance for freedom. So, and that freedom allows us to meet here, and I congratulate you all for coming here, for participating and making this democratic process available to all of us. So, again, I thank the other members of the board and the individual committee members. Thanks.
You've heard that today a little bit the fact that there has been municipal cooperation. This process actually started about a year and a half ago, and I thank Mayor Pilla for really helping to write the RFP, the request for proposal. And we did get money from New York State, $50,000 for a grant, and three of the communities, these three communities, Portchester, Rye Brook, and the town of Rye, put an additional $5,000 into it for a total fee of $65,000. And the most wonderful aspect of this is the fact that the four communities bound together. We joined together, understanding the importance of looking into what we can do to consolidate various layers of government. And we've looked at this before, but never with the cooperation of the four communities coming together. So I really want to thank each of you for your cooperation. It's been a wonderful, wonderful process. So we started about a year and a half ago. I'm not going to bore you with all of the details, but really the most important aspect is the fact that we got the money from New York State. We received that grant, and then we had to really look for a consultant, a real professional who was able to digest the numbers, work through the process so that it could report back to us and the communities. So Supervisor Carvin alluded to the fact that there was agreement on this part. We did have 6 proposals. We interviewed 5 firms, and we came to a unanimous decision. It was so unanimous that we really found a consultant that we have the utmost confidence in, and that is the Center for Government Research, which is CGR. CGR has been in the business for a little bit less than 100 years, right?
Just a touch, yeah.
A touch less than that, based in Rochester, New York, which is dear to me. That's where I went to college, and has the experience in looking at government's efficiency in government, dissolution plans, how to basically formulate shared service plans and the like. And we felt that they were the perfect entity. And also CGR is a little bit different because it's a not-for-profit entity. So, so different than the other consultants that we reached out to. So at this time, I'd like to introduce from CGR, who's here today, who's spearheading this effort. We have Joseph Stefko and also Anna Liss. So I'd like to introduce Joe, who's going to give you an overview of the process, what we've done to date, what in fact CGR has done to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you to all of you for coming out today. I share a quick story with you. Typically, we do this kind of work in communities across New York State. We've done this work in New Jersey and Massachusetts and Northeast Ohio. And steering committees inevitably will ask me, well, for this first public forum, what kind of attendance can we expect? And having done this particular meeting in probably 5 or 6 dozen communities, I can tell you that, the story I related to the steering committee was, you'll probably get that first, you don't have a lot of information out there yet. This is very much a kind of overview informational session. Maybe you'll get 10, 15, maybe 20 people if it's a good day. You'll double that by the second meeting in the middle of the study, and then by the time you have a draft report out at the end, maybe you'll get 50, 75, or 100. I think we've just jumped maybe to the 4th or 5th meeting here, so the attendance on a beautiful Saturday morning is great. So thank you again to all of you for coming out today. And I'll also say, having looked at the menu on the wall here, I'm 4 days late. I missed my Sol Florentine. That would have been great. We'll have to be more strategic in our selection of dates next time. What I wanted to do today was, first of all, give you an overview of the agenda, let you know where we're going to go for the next probably 20 or 25 minutes. Give you an overview of the study. Certainly want to give you more of an introduction to my colleague Anna Liss and I, who are the primary CGR staff members working on this engagement. Give you an overview of how we see this project progressing. We really are in probably month 1 of what is expected to be, say, a 5, 6, maybe 7-month project. We intend to hold a similar public forum to this probably in a couple months from now, once we have what's called our baseline report published. And there's some baseline information on the table about how the town and the villages provide services, where the similarities are, where the distinctions are, and then have another public forum at the back end once we have a draft, what we call our draft options report, looking at different potential scenarios regarding the delivery of services in shared fashion, potentially reorganizing the structure of municipalities in this community, and we want to be able to get some feedback from you on that baseline information and the analysis of those individual options. So you see the kind of the quick overview of today's agenda. The most important point here is the second bullet from the bottom. I'm going to speak as quickly as I can to give you an overview of the study, but then I'm going to shut up and we want to turn the floor over to all of you. Questions, comments, feedback that you have. What we want to do is incorporate your thoughts, your suggestions into this study as we go forward. I will say, and I think one of the mayors pointed this out, this is a state-funded analysis of options. The state has been funding this program for probably 7 or 8 years through what was at one time the Shared Municipal Services Incentive Program, and because that acronym was too long, we shortened it to the Local Government Efficiency Grant Program. The state in those programs for studies like this has placed a significant emphasis on public engagement. So we've worked with the steering committee to develop some mechanisms to facilitate that engagement with the community, and holding a meeting like this at several points during the process is also an integral part of that public engagement strategy. You've already met the steering committee members, but there you see them again up on the slide. Let me just kind of quickly skip through to give you an overview of our organization. As the mayor said, our organization is CGR, it's the Center for Governmental Research. He said we've been doing this for a little shy of 100 years. In fact, 96 years is the exact number. We were founded by George Eastman of Eastman Kodak back in 1915. Interesting backstory to the organization. Mr. Eastman founded us, along with some other philanthropists in the greater Rochester area, to basically serve as an outside set of eyes, to bring some outside business expertise to bear in assisting local governments. At that time, it was just in the Rochester area. Over our 96-year history, we've evolved to basically be a full-service management consulting and strategic consulting organization. We still work primarily with local governments. And our footprint has grown a little bit. We still work primarily, I would say 80% of our projects like this are across New York State. We probably have a half dozen projects just like this going on right now across New York State between my colleagues and I. We're also doing some work in New Jersey as well. Interesting, you go across state, but we think we're so unique in New York State, but you go across state lines and you see that the challenges communities are facing, especially in this economy, about what kind of municipal services do we deliver, and how do we deliver them most efficiently, and how do we structure our governments to be competitive and with a reasonable and an achievable tax burden on the communities that they serve. Those questions are being asked regardless of what state or what community you're in. So you really are involved in a larger dialogue than just in this community. As Mayor Feinstein pointed out, we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization. I think that's one of the things that distinguishes us. That was the vein in which Mr. Eastman and his cohorts founded the organization in 1915, and we still do operate as a 501c3. As the mayor said, the study team is primarily composed of myself and my colleague Anna Liss. You see a quick summary of our backgrounds up there. I actually joined CGR in 1998. I've been an associate, a senior associate, and now I direct our public finance practice. And in that capacity, direct a lot of projects just like this, asking and trying to answer very similar questions about service delivery, taxation, identifying potential efficiencies. Anna is a research associate with CGR. She is a critical member of our government management team, works with me, also working with me just up the road just down the road, I guess, in Rye, in Ossining, asking and trying to answer very similar questions to what you're doing here. Just to kind of set the stage before I walk you through our approach, our project methodology here, let me give you a quick overview from a 30,000-foot perspective of the primary objectives for this project. There really are, as we see it, two what-if questions that set the framework for this engagement. The first what-if question is analyzing the potential dissolution of the town of Rye. Right? If the town of Rye dissolves, well, what structure, what form of government follows? How do we continue to provide services? You're in a community here which, as far as the town-village relationships across New York State go, is somewhat unique. You have a community where residents get most of their services from their village governments. The town does provide some critical services, but in a lot of communities across the state, that relationship is actually reversed, where the town has a deeper and more varied service menu than the village. So one of the aspects that makes this unique. So if the town were to go away, what structure results, number one, and what are the operational and financial, from the taxpayer's pocketbook perspective, what are the operational and financial impacts of the town dissolving? Another thing that makes this study unique is that you really have, we have 3 villages represented up at the dais here, but for all intents and purposes, it's 2 and change, right? Because we have the village of Mamaroneck that isn't entirely confined to the town of Rye. A portion is in the town of Rye, a portion is in the town of Mamaroneck. That creates different tax rates, and that is likely to create some different fiscal implications if the town of Rye were to dissolve. So that's one of the things that we're going to look at as we go through the options phase of this study. So that's the first what-if question that's kind of framing our analysis here. The second what-if question is, okay, we've looked at potentially dissolving the town of Rye. Now, what if the town of Rye doesn't go away? Structurally, what if everything else stays as it is today? The town and 3 or 2.5 villages, right? Are there opportunities for us to work together more collaboratively, to build on the relationships that were demonstrated in putting this study together in the first instance? You have a history of working together across the communities here. I'm sure in many ways that some folks in this room probably don't recognize, don't even know exist. But there's a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes informal cooperation that occurs across the town and the villages in this community. So if the structure stays the same, can we build on that history of cooperation and working together and wring even more cost savings and potential tax efficiencies out of more shared services? So really those are the two what-if questions that frame the analysis here. A couple of things about our approach before I give you the details on our methodology. And this is pretty much verbatim what we told the steering committee in our initial proposal and our initial meeting with them. Number one, we see our role here as not to come in and say, this is the way you should do things. This is the answer for Rye and the villages in this community. We see our role as informants. We understand that we're entering a dialogue that's been going on for some time, certainly involving these elected officials, but their predecessors as well, of how the town and these villages have worked together in recent history. We don't come in here with a preconceived idea that you should or shouldn't go down one path or another. And at the end of the day, that's not our decision to make. It's not our role to recommend to you, you should take path B, because that's the best alternative for you. What our job is to look at all the potential options and analyze their pros and cons from an operational perspective and from a financial perspective, so that we can inform the dialogue that these elected officials have and the dialogue that the community has among themselves and with their elected officials. We see our role as informants. Having done this kind of work in so many communities across New York State and other states, I have long since learned that, especially in this environment, dollars and cents are important, taxes are important. But you know what? So too is a community's preferences for what kind of services they want and what level of services they want. So tax savings are important, but tax savings might not necessarily win the day in any one community. That's for all of you to decide. Our job is to make sure that when you make a decision about sharing services or consolidating or dissolving or whatever, that you make that decision from the most informed place possible. We're not going to make the decision for you. We're going to inform your decision. So that's the first point. The second point is really the basis for this meeting today and the ones that will follow throughout the course of the study. We are strongly committed at CGR, as I said the state was before, to facilitating a consistent public engagement, public communication strategy as part of this study. It's one of the primary reasons why we do this meeting so early in the study. I hope you bring a lot of, in 20 minutes when we open up the floor, you bring a lot of questions, comments, and feedback to the microphone. But I'll tell you right now, we don't necessarily have answers for those questions yet. I'll say that right up front. We're doing this meeting at the front end of the study so that we can use your feedback to help formulate the options, formulate the analysis, tell us what we should be sensitive to as we go through that process. In order for this conversation to work, it's got to be a two-way conversation. We can't simply go into the office, close the door, and crunch numbers and come out with an answer for you. We need to be able to have an open dialogue. You with us, you with the steering committee, and so on. And I'm going to show you one of the primary mechanisms of that public engagement strategy, which is the project website, in just a couple of minutes. Just a quick overview on our project methodology here. We basically break this study out into a series of phases, and while they look like discrete phases, there is going to be some overlap here. We've already gone through phase one, which is our project initiation. We've met with the steering committee. We did that several weeks ago, and have begun to collect some baseline information, which feeds into phase two. Over the next probably month and a half or so, we are going to be developing what's called a baseline report. A baseline review of finances and operations in this community for the town and the 3 villages. That report will contain no conclusions. That report will contain no recommendations. That report will contain no analysis. What that report is intended to do is to build a kind of a shared information or knowledge baseline for the steering committee, for our study team, and for residents in the community about what exists today. What does the town do and how does it do it? How much does it cost? How are their staff allocated? What about the villages? What services do they provide? How much do they cost? What assets? What debts? What liabilities? So we line all those data up in standard form so that we can build a shared information platform. It's a very clinical report, but I think it's essential. It's kind of a full compendium of what exists today in your municipal governments. If the reaction we've gotten from other communities is any indication, I think that baseline report will have value far beyond just this particular study. It's the kind of thing that you'd want to put on the village and town websites and allow the community to access and maybe update every year, every couple of years, so that folks know exactly who's doing what, how they're doing it, what it costs, and so on. I will say the last bullet on here, one of the key things the key pieces of information that we use to inform the baseline report is we sit down and talk with department heads. You want to understand how a department in the town or the village operate, how their workload goes up or down throughout the year, whether they're understaffed, what their challenges are, what opportunities. You sit down and you talk with those department heads. We've been doing that for the last several weeks. In fact, we spent all day Thursday meeting with department heads from the 3 villages just next door in Village Hall. So that process is ongoing. But this is not just a review of budgets and audits and org charts. All that stuff's important, but we also sit down and talk with the people that are charged with delivering essential municipal services. With that information baseline established, we then pivot the study to looking at options. This is why we want to make sure that we have a shared information baseline established. We will look at, as I suggested before, both the operational and the financial impacts of a whole range of options. One of the things I impressed upon the steering committee at our initial meeting was that we're not going to just look at one option here. Again, we're not going to make a specific recommendation. We want to look at a range of options and do a compare and contrast. Give you your entire menu of options and then answer these questions to the best of our ability for each of the options so that you know what each of them mean. We will also do an analysis of governance options. So as much as we're looking at services, we're going to be looking at government structure. That includes the possibility of doing things like dissolving the town and creating coterminous town villages in the community. One of the wrinkles in New York state law is, villages can exist, but if a town dissolves, villages can't exist. A village needs to be within a town. So if the town were to dissolve, how do we meet the requirements of state law, but still allow the villages to continue forward providing the essential services they provide? So that will be a detailed analysis of governance and structural options. We'll also look at the transitional, the procedural aspects of each of those options, again, so that when the community and your elected officials make some decision about which direction you'd like to go, you do so with full knowledge, with full information, and you know what's coming down the pike. I mentioned before how this unique challenge of how the village of Mamaroneck is split between the town of Rye and the town of Mamaroneck. That creates some questions. It's not like the puzzle piece simply fits right into the open space, the last open space in the middle of the puzzle. How would we deal with the fact that you have only a portion of one village? If the town dissolves, we still need to address not just Portchester and Rye Brook, but also the Rye Neck section of the village of Mamaroneck. And I mentioned before that we'd also be looking at transition issues. How does the process move forward? What critical steps need to take place, who are the key stakeholders that need to be engaged. To the extent the state has to play a role with some sort of special legislation, we would identify that as well. Who do your partners really need to be? And then the remaining phases, again, are concentrated on public engagement. We will publish a draft options report, put it on the website, put it on the Village